Hi class, you might notice I'm out this week and so we are going to be doing video lessons and you will need to complete the classwork and independent work, and at the end of each lesson this week you will have an exit ticket. So today we're going to look at solving quadratic equations by completing the square. And the first one here, we could not factor in the way that we've been factoring equations, right? Because this wouldn't give me a nice factored form. So instead I'm going to do what's called completing the square. So the first thing I want to do is I want to bring this C term over to where the 0 is. Now sometimes there might not be a 0, there might be a Y, but in this case there is a 0, which is great. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides, right? So if I add 3 here, it eliminates it here, and now I have 0 plus 3, which is 3. So I'll just write it again, equals 3. All right, so now I want to figure out how to complete the square. So how did we do that before? Well, we divided our b term. So this is my b. So 2 divided by 2 would give me 1. And then I want to square it. So 1 squared is 1. So the term, my b term now is going to be plus 1. It's a positive 1. So if I were to go ahead and factor that, well, oops, I forgot a step here. I want to add my 1 to both sides. Because, let me not write it like that. I want to add 1 to both sides because indeed it's an equation. So if it's on one side, I have to also add it to the other side. So here I have x squared plus 2x plus 1, right, is now equal to 4. So now I want to go ahead and let's sort of factor this, right? So if I were to factor this, I would have x plus 1 times x plus 1 equals 4. And another way I could write this is x plus 1 squared equals 4. So instead of me sort of completing the square and sort of bringing over the 4 as we've done before to write it in vertex form, I'm going to leave it like this because I can now take the square root of both sides of this equation, right? I could take the square root of x plus 1 squared, and I could take the square root of 4. But before I want you to recognize here that there are two values that would give me 4, right? 2 times 2 would give me 4. And negative 2 times a negative 2 will also give me a positive 4. So in this situation, I want to do a positive and a negative because it has two values, plus 4 or minus the square root of 4. All right, so this is one way you're going to notice or note that we're going to write this, okay? So if I take the square root here, I'm just going to have x plus 1. So now I want to figure out what is the square root of 4. Well, it's 2. So I have both 2 or positive 2, and I also have a negative 2. I have two solutions here, positive 2 and a negative 2. So here I'm going to write x plus 1 equals positive 2 and x plus 1 equals a negative 2. So I can tell right now I'm going to have two solutions, right? Just like we've had two solutions before. I want to go ahead and solve this equation by subtracting 1 on both sides and solve this equation by subtracting 1 on both sides. So I'm going to have x equals here positive 1 and x equals here, just do x equals a negative 3. All right, so now we have a separate equation here. We're going to do the same thing by completing the square. So we're going to start off again by bringing our 22 over to the other side of the equation. And of course, the way we do that is with the additive inverse. So I'm going to add 22 to both sides. So I have x squared plus 16x, and of course I'm going to leave that part blank, equals 22. So now I want to, again, as I did before, I want to divide 16 by 2, and that gives me 8. And then I want to take this new term and our new number and square it. So 8 squared is 64. So in order to complete the square here, I need to add 64 to this side. And as we did with the last one, if I add 64 here, I want to, and I'll put a box around this, I want to also add 64 on this side, right? Because again, it's an equation, it has to be equal on both sides. So now on this side, I could go ahead and factor it. Well, I know that I have 8 here, so instead of me actually listing the factors of 64 and saying 8 times 8 would give me 64, as well as 8 plus 8 would give me 16, I've sort of already done that in a way. So I'm going to use my 8x plus 8, and again, x plus 8 equals, well, this here would give me 8, and, oh, sorry, wrong number. Yeah, it would give me 8. 86. Right? And so now here, as we did before, I can rewrite that as x plus 8 squared equals 86. Okay? So now I want to do the same thing as I did before. I want to take the square root of x plus 8 squared, right? And I want to take the square root of 86. And as we noticed before, there's going to be two values here, two numbers that multiply together to give me 86. So I have to do, it's going to be a positive, two positive numbers would multiply to give me 86, and two negative numbers would multiply to give me 86. So I'm going to write that as plus or minus the square root of 86. And on this side, I will just have x plus 8. Now you might notice right away from the previous problem is that this isn't a perfect square, right? It's not going to give me a beautiful number, or not a beautiful number. All numbers might be beautiful in their own way, but it's not going to give me a number that will help give me a nice rational number. So instead, I am going to take the square root of 86, and I'm going to find the value up to, let's say, 3 terms. All right, so let me erase this part here. And what I got, I have I'm going to write the number, and I'm going to write 3 terms after the decimal. So the square root of 86 would give me either a negative, right? Because I want either a negative value, 9.273, or it would give me a positive 9.273, right? So again, I just took the square root, I used that function on my calculator and found those two numbers. So now I can write my equation like this. I have x plus 8 is equal to negative 9.273, and x plus 8 equals a positive 2.973. So let's go ahead and write that. Or and rather, because we have two solutions. And on this side, I'm going to subtract 8. And on this side, I'm going to add 8. So if I subtract 8 from a negative 9.273, I am going to get negative 17.273, right? And if I add, or rather, let me double check that. Yeah, I think that's true. And if I add 8, yep. And if I add 8, I would get a, I'm sorry, subtract 8 again. Here, I'm going to get a 1.273. Okay, so I had to subtract 8 on both sides. All right, so again, we have two solutions. We have x equals to negative 17.273, and we also have x is equal to 1.273. All right, so we're going to do one more. And here, let's see what happens in this situation. So I have x minus 2, or x squared minus 2x minus 48. Again, I want to bring my 48 over. Right? I'm adding 48 to both sides. And if it helps you to do that, That's great. And remember, I'm going fast, and I know you sometimes hate when I go fast. However, you can stop and rewind and listen to it one more time if you wish. So here I have -2. I want to divide that by 2. And then I want to square that value. So -1 squared is going to give me a +1. So I'm going to add 1 to this side, and I'm going to add 1 to this side because it is an equation. So I know that this is going to give me 49. And on this side, I'm going to have x minus 1 because I know this is a negative, and x minus 1. So -1 times -1 is also going to give me a +1. But if I add those two terms, it also gives me a -2. So that works. All right. The second way I write this is I can just say, oh, you know what? I can just say that it's the same thing. So I'm squaring that term, and I have 49. So unlike the last one, you say 49. I know that number. That's a perfect square. So we know it's going to be either, if I take the square root of 49, it's going to give me either a -7 or a +7. Right? So again, I'm going to just write negative or positive here. So I have -7, and I take the square root of this side. I have x minus 1. So if I add 1 to this side, I have x is going to equal a -6. And if I rewrite it, x minus 1 equals a +7, and I add 1, I have x is going to equal 8. Okay, our two values. So now what you need to do is you need to complete the problems for the independent work. You can work together for the independent work. However, for the format, the exit ticket at the end of class, you cannot work together. I'm expecting to see what you know on that work. Okay, good luck, and I'll talk to you later.